Tuwang-tuwa nga po yung kapatid ko, ma'am, sinend niya sa akin, pinicturean niya yung TV. Sabi niya, di ba si Ma'am Pink Mike to? Hindi niya alam yung pangalan. Si Ma'am Pink Mike.
Tapos dun mo nga marirealize, ang dami na pa rin palang nanonood nun, ano? Kasi nung pinalabas yon, Diyos ko, sunod-sunod na yung mga nag-message na may mga screenshot nung picture ko. Nakapikit, nakanganga,
International.
Hindi ko na pinanood yung buong TV Patrol yung segment pa lang na yun.
Ay, salamat naman. Tapos, nung nakatulog na ako, inabukasan, yun namang galing US, galing Canada, galing Thailand, pati, like, ang dami pa rin palang nanonood. Kasi, hindi ko
mas lumawak
akalain.
yung kanilang reach.
Oo nga, parang ganun yung nakakatuwa rin naman. Ay, nako. O yan, start na tayo, ha?
Hey.
Kanina pa tayo nag-chichika. Na-miss natin ang isa't isa, guys.
Before we start, Happy New Year po muna sa inyong lahat.
Happy New Year!
Happy New Year!
2022!
2022!
Wala daw
Happy
puti,
New
dapat yun. 2020.
Ganon. Ay, nako. Ayan, good afternoon. Welcome to Coffee Break, Reflections and Conversations. I am Rhea, Rowena, Apolinario, your resident mama and tita.
Coffee Break is a relaxed discussion on management principles over coffee, tea, or your choice of drink. I am Dan Dorado.
It is a virtual pantry where we meet our colleagues and friends in the ILC world. I'm your coffee buddy, Janny Surmieda.
And I am Dridge Reyes with a cup of positivity. So stop working for a moment, grab your drink of choice, and join us, the management faculty members of Verdes and well-deserved recess. Join us on our Coffee Break!
So last December 2021, our year-end episode of Coffee Break, we talked about outreach activities of librarians and information professionals. We had Kevin Tansyongko, Ruel Rondilla, Carlos Eclevia, and Marian Ramos Eclevia as our guests. This afternoon, we will talk about Leading for Change, a fitting opening salvo for our Coffee Break series this year. With all the things happening around us, with the pandemic topping our list, how do we lead our organizations, libraries, and information centers now? With us, and we are truly honored to have her grace our coffee break, is the President-elect of American Library Association for 2022-2023. Lessa Pelayo-Lozada is the Adult Services Assistant Manager at the Palos Verdes Library District in Southern California. She is also the current Executive Director of the Asian Pacific American Librarians Association, APALA, a past president of APALA 2016-17, and, like I said, the president-elect of the ALA. She will assume the presidency after the 2022 ALA Annual Conference. Lessa began her career in libraries at the County of Los Angeles Public Library's Lomita Library as a page, and has worked for many Southern California libraries, including Glendale Public Library and Rancho Cucamonga Public Library as a children's and general librarian. One of her most rewarding professional experiences has been as a member of the steering committee for the 2018 Joint Conference of Librarians of Color, and she credits the 2012 JCLC with influencing her career, path, and professional interests. She holds an MLIS and Bachelor of Arts in Sociology from the University of California, Los Angeles, and an Associate of Arts in Philosophy from El Camino College in Torrance, California. Her hobbies include weightlifting, baking, and for many years, she danced hula for Kaulana Kahale Kula Ona Pua Oka Aina. I don't know if I pronounce it right. With Kumuhula Randy Kaulana Chang. She currently lives in San Pedro, California, with her English professor poet husband, Christian Hans Lozada, and their menagerie of pets. Ladies and gentlemen, it's our honor to present to you Lessa Lozada. Hello, Lessa.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. It's so great to see and meet you all.
Yeah, congratulations again, Lessa, on winning the ALA presidency for 2022-2023.
Thank you. It's very exciting.
Okay, right. Maybe Lessa, we were talking a while ago about your Filipino heritage. Maybe you can tell us more about it so our
Yeah.
listeners can, okay.
Sure. So I am 1/8 Filipino. My great-grandfather, Melencio Galang Pelayo, came from Pampanga in 1910 to Hawaii. He met my great-grandmother, who is full native Hawaiian. So that's how we are Hawaiian Filipino. And that's on my grandfather's side. And so he came to help work the plantations and ended up becoming a tattoo artist, actually. And my grandmother was a club bouncer, so they were quite the pair. so that's
right.
That's my heritage, my ancestral tie. And then my husband is also half Filipino, and so his dad and his two older brothers are from Cebu. So
Wow. You mentioned 1/8 Filipino, right, Lessa?
Yeah.
And the other portions are your Portuguese, and you're also Chinese, right? So you had everything there.
Hawaii was a busy place in the early 1900s.
Right, right. Okay, so Lessa, tell us more about the things you're currently busy with.
Yeah, so in my regular job, I just finished up a community art show where we had over 100 artists from the community display their artwork, which was really cool. It was a first time experience for a lot of our community members to showcase their art and sell their art also. And we had a lot of teenagers participate. So we had folks as young as 14 and as old as folks in their 80s and 90s sharing their art with us. So that was really special. We had a father and daughter who both sold their first piece of artwork. And the little girl was so excited when she saw the little dot saying sold that she started crying. It was so, so sweet. So that's what I just finished wrapping up in my regular work. And of course, in my American Library Association work, I'm getting ready for my presidential year. So my campaign was leading together for change, because we can only do things, kind of as one and as a collective. And coming out of that, I have a committee of 17 really amazing folks helping me figure out what we're going to do over the next year. And so our theme for the next year will, from leading together for change, is going to go into our brave communities, because of all the bravery that our library workers and our communities have had to endure over the last couple of years, and continue to be brave for each other over the pandemic. So we're going to focus on labor and workers' rights, that all labor has dignity. We're going to focus on partnerships, how our partners that aren't necessarily in libraries can inform what we do in libraries and also be advocates for us. So we're going to look for folks who are really strong in areas like sustainability and voting rights, as well as equity, diversity, and inclusion. And then, of course, for the American Library Association, we're going to look at membership growth. And within the equity, diversity, and inclusion lens as well, we're going to look at universal design and intersectionality, and what that means for us as in our brave communities and as community advocates. So I'm really excited about that and coming up.
Yeah, you have a lot on your plate right now, Lessa. Of course, you have your regular work, and the work at ALA, I understand, is a very, very big responsibility. And we're very glad that you have those wonderful people with you. You said 17-member team helping you figure out the things that you have to do for the next 2 years, right, for your presidency. Okay, so that's very good to know, Lessa. And I'm just curious about your regular work. Is it open already? I mean, given the pandemic, has it been closed for a while and then it's open now?
Yeah, so we were closed. We were doing only online services for about 2 months. So from March of 2020 until June of 2020. And then we reopened. We didn't let folks inside the library, but we did curbside service. So they would drive up in their cars and then we would hand them their books that they would put on hold. So we did that for almost a year, actually. We did it for quite a long time. And so we've been fully open back to the public since school started back in August. So folks are back in the building now, and we've got masks and plexiglass everywhere. But it's almost back to business as normal, except for this surge. We had to stop doing our in-person programming again. So we're back to all virtual there. But
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, hearing all those programs and all those activities is really inspiring because in terms of our public library here in the Philippines, there are a lot of things that we should still be doing. We need to improve. So I just want to know, Lessa, what drove you to or inspired you to become a public librarian, to work in a public library?
that's a great question. I didn't want to be a librarian at first. I wanted to be an elementary school teacher and teach kindergarten, actually, as I think a lot of young folks do. And so I was going to school for that while I was working at a bookstore. And one day when I was working at the bookstore, some librarians came in and they had a ton of money to spend because it was the end of the year. And this is when we still all had lots of money in public libraries. And so they just started spending tons and tons of money, and they had carts and carts of books. And I was like, what is this job? That seems so cool. So I found out that they were librarians, and I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll do that when I'm tired of teaching, right? Like that'll be my second career. So I was going to get my bachelor's degree, and I started doing classes to become a teacher. And I was listening to everyone talk about, how much they love their students and all the hard work they had to do dealing with 36-year-olds in a classroom. And I was like, that does not sound like fun. That sounds really stressful. And when I was talking to them, I was like, I really love, helping kids learn how to read and activities around that. And I remembered my plan B. So my plan B to become a librarian became my plan A. 2 days of teaching credential school was all I could muster before I quit. And then I started applying to library school right after that. And I have not looked back since.
That's a very nice story. And what are your future plans career-wise? I mean, after being president of ALA, I'm sure you're going to focus more again on your job within the public library. So what's it's like? What's the future you're envisioning for your library?
Oh, that's a good question, Dan. And I do want to give just a big thank you to my job, because they let me do all this stuff with the American Library Association and the Asian Pacific American Librarians Association. And I feel like they're a really great example of how other libraries can support their staff at any level. Usually it's people who are directors that get to do the things that I'm doing as a children's librarian and now as an assistant manager. But once all this ALA stuff is over, someday I do want to be head of a youth services department and go back into children's librarianship. I'm also interested in possibly someday working for maybe a library association and supporting librarians in that way and helping them from the back end. I think that that's really important and really great work. So those are kind of the two areas that I'm looking at and I'm hopeful for in the future.
Yes, thank you for that. And I hope a lot of our viewers will be inspired also to go into public libraries, because it's a sector within in our country that hasn't been put into the spotlight. A lot of librarians here in the Philippines go to universities and schools, but not so
Yeah.
much on the public sector.
Yeah, that's right, Dan. And really, Lessa, I think I'm hoping and I think you will really inspire a lot of LIS students in the Philippines to go into public librarianship, because I don't know, sometimes when I teach library management and we're talking about public libraries, I would always challenge my students to really go into public libraries because I believe there are a lot of opportunities at public libraries. I mean, working in a public library and with you here, telling us all these wonderful opportunities and programs that you can engage into or implement in your library. So I hope we will be inspiring a lot of students to go into public librarianship.
I really hope so. There's so much opportunity within public libraries to just do lots of different kinds of things.
Right.
Like I talked about the art program that I just finished, but there's story times, there's lectures that you can put on, crafts, there's maker spaces, so you can build things. You don't even have to stay in the library. I don't know, with academic librarians, I think you're mostly inside, at least the college and university, right? But a little bit, right? Like go into the quad a little, but with public libraries, there's no barriers and there's no boundaries to what you can do, and you can really make the job whatever you want it to be. So if folks have questions also, feel free to reach out to me. I'm always happy to talk public libraries with anyone.
I'm always excited to receive my copy of the American Library magazine because I always see the different projects, the different outreach programs being done by a lot of public libraries all over the states, and I sometimes I wish I hope we can also do this. I hope we can recreate this in our local setting. So yes, I hope you can inspire more public librarians.
There we go. No? A while ago, Ma'am Lessa, I was listening to what Ma'am Rhea is introducing while Ma'am Rhea is introducing you, and I noticed that you have an extensive experience in public librarianship. So maybe my question is, how has it changed since the time you started working in a public library up until, let's say, early 2020, just before the pandemic? Has there any change or?
It's changed a lot since I came into libraries. So I started in a public library as a page, putting books on the shelf. That's how I started. And back then, I feel like it was starting to change more from a traditional library where you just come to check out books and really turning into a community center and turning into a place, that it's not home, it's not school or work, it's where you can go to explore and try new things. And so what I've seen over the last 10 years is, more diversity in books and programming and librarianship, all different kinds of races and ethnicities and backgrounds and sexual orientations. There's just been such a change and a shift in the voices that we're sharing within public libraries and our institutions. And also, like I mentioned, more of a community center, but more incorporation of different types of literacy. We used to just be focused on reading as one literacy, but now we're also worried about financial literacy and, economic literacy, and all these different kinds of hands-on, really practical, everyday things are important as well. And I've also seen a big push for emphasis on access and making sure that everyone has access, and that digital literacy, digital equity is a right at this point. We need to eat, we need to have a roof over our head, and we need to have internet access, especially since the pandemic has happened. It's become essential to everything that we do. And I think that, in the past, and this is not as much when I came into libraries, but the history of public libraries is really assimilation, right? For, at least in America, American immigrants to basically become white and to learn how to be proper citizens. And I think that has changed a lot too. Instead of us as public librarians trying to teach people how to be, we're embracing who they are and encouraging them to share that with the world. So I think that, there's been a lot of change and there's still a lot to go on. And one of the things that's been interesting to watch is, and this is kind of a challenge for us, I think, in public libraries, there's some good to it, but it's also, there's not, the way that funding works for public libraries is so different in so many different parts of the country that as services are taken away in other areas like mental health services, social services, the library is making up for those. in a lot of different ways. And so that's been an interesting thing to watch develop, and also watch how librarians are shifting and trying to help as much as possible, but maintaining boundaries on, we're still just librarians. We're not doctors, we're not therapists and things like that. So that's been interesting to watch too.
So yeah, ma'am. So yes, the changes in public libraries since you started was great, as you've mentioned, and several challenges were already discussed specifically for the public libraries. But I also want to take into consideration our current context, the current pandemic. I'm pretty sure there's so much more changes since the pandemic started. What were the challenges that you face in your public libraries in your work during the pandemic, and how were you able to face them?
Yeah, the first challenge that we faced was making sure that our patrons had access to our resources, right? Like I mentioned, when we went in and we had to shut down the building, we really only had virtual resources available before we started checking out books to folks again. But not everybody has the internet. And so how were we reaching out to folks who didn't have the internet, who may have been elderly, lived alone, didn't have their family able to come and help them? How were we reaching out to them? And so one of the ways that our community reached out to that population was through phone trees, calling folks, also knocking on doors. Our local high school started a volunteer group where they would go and do grocery shopping for seniors. And so we were able to tap into those resources to make sure that their information needs were taken care of. And we did a very old-fashioned thing. We just made a bunch of postcards and we mailed them out to everybody in our library who didn't have an email address, because we figured they didn't know if we were open or what we could do for them, and that we could give them the information they needed over the phone as well. So that was one way that we were able to help that out. Another challenge, of course, was staying safe. Especially when we reopened and we were helping patrons face to face, making sure that, we had the proper masks on, that we were following proper protocols. It was really stressful. I am really lucky to work in a library that had the resources to make sure that we were safe. That we were able to stagger our schedules so that we didn't have all of our staff together at one time, and that we could work from home and do all of these different combinations. And I know that that has been and is still a struggle for a lot of librarians, especially public librarians, because it comes down to another challenge that came out, and that's budgets and staffing. The money, where is the money? Everything shut down, so there was a loss of a lot of public library funding. And so how administrations responded to that was very different in a lot of different parts of the country. And so folks have had to get really creative with that. But everybody's doing the best that they can and constantly adjusting and being flexible. And I always admire the stories that I hear of librarians who are making the most out of often a very little.
Mm. Ayan.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I actually find it interesting that despite the geographical differences, we have so much similar challenges. Problem of access, problem of staffing, budget, and technological divide and all that. But so I hope our viewers were taking notes of the solutions that you mentioned. But on the other hand, as cliche as it may sound, as you've already mentioned, that we are trying to do what we can do the best that we can despite the pandemic. So maybe I would also like to follow up question that what were the opportunities that you were able to explore, or perhaps looking forward to explore further during the pandemic, or perhaps like as cliche as it may sound, what were the silver linings for this cloud that we're in right now?
It is always weird to say silver linings of a pandemic. Someday we're going to figure out what the right phrase is. I say it all the time, but it feels a little weird. But there were opportunities and silver linings, because we had to figure out how to reach folks who may not have internet. I love your cat, Janny. So cute.
She's always interrupting me when there's a recording. She would
It's
always
it's a very clingy cat.
yes.
I'm surprised my cat hasn't come through yet, honestly. So I feel you.
Regular hosts of Coffee Break also.
Cute. But yeah, so examining accessibility, right? And how we are reaching out to our community who was never coming into our library. We were really fascinated, to figure out some of that. And the part of the accessibility that we really had to look at was, in terms of if we're doing Zoom, closed captioning, right? Making sure that folks can hear, that our speakers have the right equipment, that they have microphones, because a lot of our programs were getting folks who had never been into our library because they were homebound perhaps and didn't have access to these programs. So that was one opportunity for us to get creative, especially as we're reopening and doing in-person programs again, to figure out how we can continue serving those folks who can't come into the library or who need closed captioning, even if we're in person. I'm somebody who has closed captioning on my television for everything. And I watch movies with closed captioning, some slightly hard of hearing, but I like, the visual as well. So that was one kind of silver lining, as well as just having to get creative and try new things and really stretch beyond the imagination, I think, that we had. And I think a lot of us did things that we didn't know that we were capable of. In the rush to make sure that we were doing our jobs and the rush to make sure that we were providing the service, I put together a web page in like 30 minutes, just like the pure adrenaline of trying to get everything up as fast as possible to reach as many people as possible. I don't know if I could do it again, but, trying new things, being creative, and, the drive towards equity, right? Like, in America, especially, when we shut down, we had the George Floyd uprising and we had a racial equity reckoning. And so we had that at the same time. And so navigating all those different areas really forced us to go outside of our comfort zones, learn more about who we are, how we operate within the world, and how we can make it a better place too.
Hey, very well said, Lessa. Very inspiring indeed. So a while ago, we're talking about, of course, your experiences as a public librarian, but also you had a very extensive experience or considerable experience as well in managing or being a member of various library associations. So one of which, of course, you're the president-elect now of ALA, and it's such a huge association. In fact, you have membership all over the world, right, Lessa? And Dan here is a member of ALA. I used to be a member of ALA, and I think I have to update my membership with you on the helm. So, all right. So Lessa, where do you think library associations in general are heading to? Or you can speak on behalf, of course, of ALA or the associations you've been a member of or you've held.
I think that right now associations are essential to making sure that our profession and our library workers have what they need and can advocate for themselves. I think that they're essential in providing training, continued education. Whether or not you have a library degree, there's so much that you can get out of learning from the folks that you meet and that you network with within the association, as well as the formal classes and webinars that are provided by the association. And then I think that especially, because we have national associations and state associations and local associations, I think one of the really important things, depending on whichever level, is the legislative part of it, the policy making, law making, making sure where federal and state funding goes. That all comes down to our associations advocating for us and working for us to get us that money that we help very directly with our community members. So I think that they are essential. I know that how they are structured sometimes is a little antiquated. And so I've been, part of a number of groups and committees in all the associations I belong to figure out if how we're operating is still the right way for us to operate in the 21st century. So it's been interesting to be a part of that change too, to make sure that we're constantly developing ourselves for who our members need now.
Yeah. So, Lessa, what do you think are the activities that we should concentrate our efforts into? For example, in ALA, or what are the things that we need to watch out for?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I wouldn't say have been struggling with in ALA, but that we want to be really clear about is, what do your membership dues get you? You know, what is the point of joining an association when you can organize and have these conversations for free, right? Around the world. I mean, you know, we're speaking here 11 a.m. your time, you know, 7 p.m. in the afternoon, of course. But what can we have? What can we have? And what do we need to watch out for? We need to watch out for making sure that we have that advocacy component, that we have folks within our associations that we are part of to advocate for us and to make those networks and make those connections around the world, and to develop those relationships for and with us over time so that we can come together. So there's things like that. I think that it's also really important that, and that's gotten lost, you know, kind of in a really large association like ALA, where you have 50,000 members, is that you forget that you are ALA. Every single member is the association. It's not some bunch of random people, you know, in a room, or it's not just a building. It is each one of us. And so making sure that when you join these organizations, that you also kind of know why you're joining and what you want to get out of it, but what you can contribute to, because everybody can contribute to these organizations, and we need everyone to, if we want to make the real difference that we need.
Yeah, that's right. And also here in the Philippines, the one that you mentioned, it's an issue as well, because people would ask, why should I be a member of that library association? What will I get out of it? What will I get out of being a member of that association? And it's good that you mentioned those things. And I think on top of that, also we can say that we can have professional connections and networks, like you, of course. So we are able to connect with you because Dan here is a member of ALA, and that's a good thing. And also Dan is also sharing with us the things he learned from being a member of ALA. Like he would usually send us the ALA magazine and show us those things so we can learn from ALA as well. Okay, so are there other things that you would like to tell us, Lessa, before we proceed with the next question?
I think the only other thing that I would like to kind of focus or to share about the importance of it, you know, and you touched on this, is how we can come across, you know, geographic barriers, but also different types of libraries, and how much we can learn from all the different types of libraries. I have learned so much from my academic librarian friends that they have changed the complete way that I serve the public, you know, and my archive friends and my special library, my law librarian friends, we have so much to share with one another. And so I think that that's important. And that's one of the things that I find the most valuable out of my memberships.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that, because that's the very reason why I joined the ALA. Because I think myself of a systems librarian, but the problem is within the Philippines, I do not have we do not have that many people who are into information systems, who are into the tech side of the libraries. We are very few. And when I look into ALA, I found out about LITA. And through LITA, I was able to find my community. I was able to talk about my projects, and people can actually understand what I was talking about. So I was very happy. And from then on, I was continually renewing my membership of ALA, just because I know that I have that community. I have those people who I can share my projects with, my problems with, and as community we can solve it. And I think another reason why I was excited, I remember that morning when an ALA Connect email, I read that email that Lessa Pelayo-Lozada was the president-elect, and hey, that surname is Filipino sounding. So I googled you, and I saw that you have a Filipino heritage, and I was excited because I know for a fact that in the past, ALA and our national organization, PLAI, and even our school, the School of Library Information Studies, have previous collaborations, have previous joint projects, and we do not know why that linkage has do not exist anymore. But with you at the helm of ALA, we are excited because we know for a fact that we can build that bridge again. So, related to the question, how can other library associations, specifically maybe our local organizations here in the Philippines, can reach out to ALA for partnerships, for collaboration opportunities? So how can they approach you, or how can they approach ALA?
I'm so glad you said all of that, Dan, especially, the bridging, right? And the creating connections. As I was getting ready to speak with you folks, I was talking to ALA past president, Loida Garcia-Fibo, and she says, hello. She was like, I miss the folks over there so much. And one thing when I think about creating these bridges is something that she always shares with me. And that is that we are all doing this work already, right? Like worldwide, we are developing together. And so to create those connections, through whether it's, you just sent me a message, Dan, right? Like you sent me an email and I responded. And of course, not all leaders are like that, but that's the kind of leader that I am. I consider myself to be very approachable. And if I can do something with you all, I want to do it. And if I, have the funds to come visit and come help to make those connections, I would love to be able to do that when we are not in a global pandemic. But I think it's important to find those folks who are open to creating those kinds of connections, and I know the past few ALA presidents have been really open to creating those connections. And you brought up, Dan, also, you're like, you saw a Filipino last name, which is really exciting because, here everyone assumes that it's, Spanish, and, which, it is, but I'm like, it's Filipino twice over, my maiden last name and my married last name together. But I'm only the second Asian Pacific American president of the American Library Association. The first one is Patty Wong, and she's president right now. And so I think that developing these relationships, having these conversations is really important for us to be able to collaborate together around issues that affect all of us. I think one of the areas that we can collaborate and partner in is sustainability. ALA looks at, the triple bottom line of sustainability, which is economically feasible, socially equitable, and environmentally sound. And I know that the United Nations and Loida Garcia-Fibo has done a lot of this work, and so has our past president, Julius C. Jefferson. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. There's 17, and there's a lot of them, but they affect every single country around the world. And they're all goals that we can share in and to work on together. And so I think that whether, like I said, it's traveling or having these conversations, that's really important to creating these connections and seeing what we can learn from each other.
Yeah. Lessa, thank you for being that kind of leader who really responds to anonymous emails. No, not really anonymous, but
I wasn't sure if she was going to reply,
exactly.
but she did. So thank you.
Yes, and when you were talking about who our guest will be in coffee break, Dan actually suggested you, and he said I'll try and I'll see if she will reply, and you did, Lessa. Thank you so much. We won't be having this conversation if you didn't say yes to Dan. And I think we need a lot of leaders, because before, it's not very usual. It's not usual for an officer of a library association abroad saying yes to a local association in the Philippines. I mean, but with you, thank you so much. And it's also good that you're a tita and a tita. We have a lot of things in common, and you have that 1/8 Filipino race in you, so that's a good thing also. And like Dan mentioned also a while ago that being a member of a big library association like ALA, he was able to find like-minded individuals who is like him, a data scientist, systems librarian, and so on. So thank you. And we are really looking forward to more collaborations with you, Lessa, and ALA. Probably in the future, we can also um, we will invite other library association presidents here in the Philippines to meet with you and probably look for possible partnerships that we can do. We are also into sustainable development goals, and we more or less have the same issues, no, confronting public libraries. So, okay. So, Lessa, any pieces of advice, no, to starting professionals who would like to venture into into public librarianship, and maybe who would also like to be really involved in library associations?
For both of them, my advice is to be brave, because you have to be open to try new things. I mean, I never imagined that I would be president of the American Library Association, when I decided to go into libraries, but I kept trying new things. And when I was invited to do things, I would say yes. If it was something I was interested in, of course, because you have to be careful when you say yes too much. You can very quickly get too much on your plate and get burnt out. But I think it's important to, just be open and don't be afraid to put yourself out there. I think that sometimes we get really nervous and that folks are going to judge us or they're not going to accept us. But, like Dan found his community. I found my community within ALA and within the Asian Pacific American Librarians Association, and those connections helped me to be brave to try new things. So don't be afraid. Put yourselves out there, everyone.
And thank
Be
you very
brave.
much. Yeah, be brave. I was actually nervous earlier, but while talking to Mom Lessa, I was like, yeah, it's easy. It's very easy to talk to her. So yeah,
I was nervous.
so yeah, dear viewers, don't be afraid. Go out there, contact your officers, contact other people. Perhaps you can connect with them, network with them, work with them. And yeah, Ma'am Lessa, for the last question, they always give me the last question. This is the most important question for the episode. What is your usual drink of choice when you are busy working or just relaxing? What is your favorite drink?
My favorite drink during the work day is hazelnut coffee. And my favorite drink when I'm hanging out is red wine.
Whoa, that's good.
Very tita.
Very tita.
Really, tita.
Yeah. And so, yeah, the red one. Oh, hazelnut. Yeah, I really love hazelnut too before. So, like, personally, I am actually a Tito of myself, but I have to concede coffee will always be considered as part of the repertoire of champions. Come on. But with that, we'd like to thank our coffee sponsor, Cafe Moksha. Cafe Moksha is a distributor and retailer of coffee and cacao products. Visit and like their Facebook page for more details. So, yeah, actually, Sir Janny is our champion for coffee here in the SLIS. I think how many cups have you drunk today, sir?
Today, if we started at around 1 a.m., maybe I already had 5 cups of coffee.
Wow, Janny, really a coffee
It's
buddy.
really a gasoline for me. It keeps me alive and kicking. That's why I always. There we go.
It's already time.
It's
Yeah.
Go
time
back to work now.
already. Oh, it's time to go back to work. Okay, Lessa probably would like to tell us about your projects or future projects that you would like to share to our
Yeah.
listeners.
Maybe you can talk
Before-
about Librarian X, since it's an
Yeah,
upcoming
that's right.
event of ALA.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. So in just a few days, we are celebrating. We have our very first LibLearn X event, as Dan mentioned, and it's a brand new learning experience that we are trying for the first time ever with our members. And so there's a couple of different learning formats. There's really short, 10, 15-minute sessions that folks can get to just learn some little nuggets. There's some hands-on workshops for folks to network as well as learn together. And then there's more traditional kind of conference, sessions that folks can go to listen to panels. So we're trying something new. We'll have recordings out afterward as well. And so we really hope that folks will check it out. And I'm also really looking forward to hopefully our first in-person conference in a few years in Washington, D.C. And so we will hopefully welcome as many folks as we can to that. I'm really looking forward.
Okay.
I'm a
Yeah, go
Colin
ahead, Dan.
Kaepernick. I'm a Colin Kaepernick fan, so I'm excited about his closing remark. And but also I'm a Colin Kaepernick fan as an activist. So Colin Kaepernick as an activist, I'm a huge fan. So I can't wait for that one.
Yes, Colin Kaepernick is our closing speaker, and I was asked to speak before him to kind of provide a librarian call of action, because you know that Colin is going to challenge us,
Right.
to advocate for everyone's rights. And so it's very nerve-wracking to be the lead-in for Colin Kaepernick. I was like, what can I say? This man is an advocate for so many, and talk about bravery. He put his entire life on the line. So I'm super excited to hear
Right.
him too. I cannot wait.
He challenged the national sport of the United States.
Sure did. Still talking about it.
Until now, right? All right. So thank you very much, Lessa. Thank you so much. We truly had a very fruitful and wonderful discussion this afternoon. And we hope to have you again in the future episodes of Coffee Break. Okay. So to all our viewers and listeners, join us again next month as we discuss another important management topic and issue here in
Coffee
Coffee
break!
Coffee Break.
break.